Welcome to this edition of Healthy Living. I'm your host, Tim Kelly. We have two very special guests today to talk about a topic, Zika virus. So we're going to talk about what the virus is and how it's spread, and also how what the mosquito population here in the city of Suffolk is in relation to the potential for this. And again, that's what we have Mr. Abadam here, Charles Abadam, our mosquito control superintendent with Public Works, to talk about that aspect. And Amal Patel, who's the epidemiologist with Western Tidewater Health District. So gentlemen, again, thank you both for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting us.
Topic is Zika. So I've heard about it in the news, but you can tell us what it is. What does it mean when we talk about the Zika virus?
Okay, Zika virus, it causes the Zika virus infection. It's an arboviral illness. It's not new. It's actually been in the world for quite a long time. There have been previous outbreaks prior to 2015, Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands. In mid-2015, there was actually the first confirmed case in Brazil, and since then it's developed into an outbreak in Brazil, other South American countries, Central America, Mexico, and in the Caribbean.
Okay. Now, how is it spread? I know, again, at least based on what we know right now.
The primary transmission is from an infected mosquito bite.
Okay.
And that is how you come down with the infection.
And if you are infected or have Zika virus, what type of symptoms are we talking about? What is something to kind of look for, so to speak?
Actually 80% of the people who will come down with the Zika virus infection are not symptomatic, they're asymptomatic. They don't even know that they have the Zika virus infection. The 20% that do, you'll have fever, a rash, and the rash can be especially itchy, joint pain, muscle pain, and also redness around the eyes. Symptoms are usually very mild to moderate, and so the majority of people will not even seek medical care. It resolves itself within 3 days to 7 days, and usually from your blood, the virus is gone within 7 days after infection.
Is there, and well, based on what you just said right there, as far as how it kind of, I guess, works its way through, so to speak, there's not necessarily a treatment then directed to Zika per se, right?
No, there is no direct treatment, but if you have a high fever, take Tylenol, drink plenty of fluids to stay hydrated.
Now, if you think you have Zika, based on the description you've given, or maybe you just kind of think you do, or maybe you've traveled abroad and have come back and you feel like, well, wait a minute, I've got these symptoms, I've been in these locations, what should you do in that instance?
Sure. I think it's important to state that there has been no domestic transmission of Zika virus in the United States. There has been travel-associated cases, people who travel to these countries experiencing the outbreak of Zika virus.
Yes.
If you feel like you do have the symptoms, you should just call your physician, and they will guide you through. And if testing is warranted, the physician will reach out to public health to arrange that testing.
Now, I know one of the things that we've heard related to Zika is I don't want to use the word danger, but the importance when it comes to women who are pregnant and the potential for birth defects possibly. And again, I know that we're still kind of early on in figuring out the relationship there, but what information do we have about that right now?
Yeah, and actually I think that is the reason that we saw this attention paid to it. In Brazil in the outbreak, again, this is, they don't have a direct link, it's suspected. Pregnant females who did have the Zika virus suffering early miscarriages and having children born with, or babies born with microcephaly. Microcephaly is basically a baby with a condition where you have an abnormally small head, which is associated with development delays in brain formation. Again, that's suspected, but in the meantime, the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, and the Virginia Department of Health says that it's very important that if you have traveled, if you're a pregnant female and traveled to one of the Zika-affected countries within the past 3 months,
right,
it's important, even if you didn't have symptoms, to call your physician and see what they say. If they say, we should test you, then they'll arrange it through the health department, and the results of that test basically will determine your prenatal care in terms of monitoring the developing fetus.
I got you. So again, if you meet that criteria, and it's a very kind of specific set of criteria in that instance, to follow up and again to determine what may need to occur based on the situation that you have or don't have, as the case would be.
And the Virginia Department of Health has reached out to the local medical community so they're aware, and we will continue to do so, and also as new developments arise in Zika virus, of course, reach out to the public to make sure that they're informed.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, again, we talked about, certainly the Zika virus is spread through mosquitoes. And Charles, certainly that's your area of expertise.
Right.
This is not mosquito season. We're sitting here in
Right.
late February talking about it. It's kind of chilly outside, so it's not really something happening here right now. But what types of mosquitoes are we talking about, and how does that play into the mosquito population and the types that we typically see here in this area of Virginia?
Sure. Well, the mosquito that it's primarily linked to at this moment is the name is the Aedes aegypti mosquito, and it's definitely the one that's causing most of the transmission with all of the outbreaks that are happening. But the disease can be transmitted by Aedes albopictus, and as you can see, it's the same genera, the Aedes genus. So what's happening is that we do have this mosquito in our area. We do not have any Aedes aegypti established colonies in Suffolk. We have found it before, and it has historically been in the area, but they're no longer in the area. But as for Aedes albopictus, it's your basic, it is your Asian tiger mosquito, the mosquito that most people are pretty much aware of. Those that are very small, white stripes, ankle biters. They can bite during the day, they can bite in the evening, so they're pretty voracious. I mean, they are opportunistic and will bite any mammal with the ability to bite. I mean, with the availability to bite them. They breed in all the areas that we have been saying for years and years to clean your house out of and clean your areas and your neighborhoods of, and that's artificial containers, your tires, anything holding water, tarps, just anything where stagnant water is going to be held. These mosquitoes will will inhabit those areas. And they are the primary nuisance species for most of the Hampton Roads area. I know that we do have the swamp, and the swamp does breed a lot of mosquitoes, but this particular mosquito is not, doesn't take advantage of the swampy habitat as much as other mosquitoes do. They do breed in what would be tree holes, but if you take the tree hole habitat and you transfer it to, it basically is a container itself. So anything that's going to be holding water, grabbing a lot of detritus or grabbing a lot of nutrients from leaves and stuff that are falling into these artificial containers, these mosquitoes can inhabit. And really they do like to breed in areas where they'd be able to feed on a lot of different types of nutrients.
Right.
And humans are just the best nutrients for that at this point in time for them. They came from the used tire trade from overseas. So used tires would come into the West and they would travel over to the East Coast of Virginia, of East Coast of the United States, and establish colonies all throughout the southern West and the southern East. And now it's traveling as far as Philadelphia, up into the Northeast now. So a lot of the areas in the Midwest really don't have it, and a lot of areas in the Northwest really don't have it. But you're seeing a lot of, you're seeing that species invade into the United States in a lot of different states. So what we're doing here in Suffolk is everything that we have been doing: adulticiding, surveillance, going and dumping out and doing source reductions, and warning people to protect themselves from mosquitoes,
Yes.
as usual,
Right,
as
yeah.
everybody would be. So we're really not doing anything any different because we have all the programs in place to
Correct.
survey Suffolk for these populations. And we have specific traps that we set out in order to catch those mosquitoes. And when we see higher populations of Aedes albopictus or any mosquito that would be causing a problem for public health and for nuisance, we intensify our operations, we intensify our surveillance, and we do everything that we can to protect the public.
So basically, in a matter of saying it, it's really kind of business as usual from your perspective
Right.
with regard to how you're going to deal with this mosquito or that mosquito. And again, the same rules apply where individuals, what can you do to help? Well, again, get rid of those stagnant water sources that are on your property. You talk about the tires. I mean, I guess bird baths that aren't really being kind of monitored, ditches and things like that. I know we aren't at that time of year yet, but when we start talking about the mosquito dunks that are provided, certainly utilizing those. But again, we're here in February. It's cold. The mosquitoes are not exactly, flourishing, shall we say, but yet you guys and gals with the Mosquito Control Division are sitting there getting yourself together, getting the supplies ready, and continuing. I believe you just got back from a conference.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Zika was one of the topics that was discussed
Definitely.
there. So again, just informing yourself to know, what you're going to be dealing with potentially. And again, it's all situational. And again, with the monitoring that you do, you kind of know what's coming and going, what's happening out there. And of course, working with the health department in the event that something would come up, because as it is, putting Zika aside for just a second, you guys are looking for some regular things to pop up in that mosquito population, and those tend to be, West Nile?
West Nile virus and Eastern equine encephalitis. So our regular surveillance is catching those mosquitoes that are primary vectors for West Nile and Triple E, but they're also catching all the other mosquitoes out there. So we know where our largest populations of our primary vectors are, including the primary vector for Zika virus.
Right. Okay. Well, I think that covers a lot of what we're talking about here as far as where we are right now, sort of our snapshot in time. Again, we sort of said business as usual, so to speak, for mosquito control. The health department certainly evaluating the situation in the event that something would kind of pop up in the local market, so to speak. But again, given the fact that we don't have the mosquitoes out there here, unless, again, you brought it from somewhere else, it's really not, it isn't here.
Yeah.
Correct? Is that right?
Every case, Virginia has had 3 cases as of today, and they've all been travel associated.
So again, something to continue to monitor. And again, we rely on the health department. Of course, you guys communicate with other departments in the area, so it's not just the Suffolk perspective. I know Western Tidewater covers more than just Suffolk itself, but there's communication among the whole Virginia Department of Health with regard to making sure what's going on, and I'm sure that extends across the border to North Carolina and neighboring states, so that everyone kind of has a regional and even broader out picture about what we're dealing with or not dealing with, as the case would be. So again, if you believe you may have Zika symptoms and it certainly have traveled or whatever the circumstances, again, the recommendation is certainly talk to your doctor.
Correct.
Yeah. And well, I guess that'll do it, really. We're talking about the Zika virus. Of course, again, this is information as of today with what we know and what the situation is, but really just trying to make sure people are on board with what's going on, again, what resources are available in the community, what our agencies are doing to work together, and certainly working independently as well to ensure certainly the health of the people in our area.
I'd like to mention that, like Amal was talking about earlier, it's unless we find a human case in the area and they test and find it, mosquito control, business as usual, but there would be no instances for us to test for Zika, and we don't have the capability to test for Zika, as do very little mosquito controls in the United States actually do have the capability of testing for Zika. So it is something that first we have to work cooperatively with our health department to know, is anything happening? And if they find something, hopefully, we'll get that information as quickly as possible, and then we can disseminate all the operations that are necessary to deal with it.
And I guess your point, you don't want to be looking for something that isn't there.
Right.
And putting resources in a certain area, not to say that if it wasn't, that's a different set of circumstances, but again, we react to the information that we have and the situations that, again, that your 2 agencies are working together to coordinate. But as you said, if you're testing for something that doesn't exist, it's kind of a waste of resources, so to speak. But with the knowledge that you're continuing to be aware of it, and if a situation arises, then we are able to respond accordingly.
As long as we know where our vectors are at and in Suffolk and the areas that they could definitely affect, then we know the potential that it has once it comes into the area.
Correct. Got it. All right. Well, gentlemen, again, thank you very much. Amal and Charles, again, appreciate the time and the wealth of information the 2 of you have been able to share with us today. And that would do it for this edition of Healthy Living. I'm your host, Tim Kelly. We will see you next time.